Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Talent Tap podcast. My name is Danny Lachmandas, your host and founder of Kryntalo and Country ATMs. At Kryntalo, we help businesses generate a consistent qualified client opportunities through an AI-powered growth engine. And at Country ATMs, we deploy ATMs into all kinds of businesses from bars to gas stations to clubs to hotels. Just let us know if you want an ATM in your business. We'll get it in for free. And with us today, we have Todd McEwan, president of New England ATMs. How are you doing today, Todd?
Good, good. Thanks for having me, Danny. I appreciate it.
Yeah, really good having you on. Where are you calling in from today, Todd?
So I'm based out of the Northeast. We're about an hour and a half outside of west of Boston in Springfield. So if you go, it just like I said, about 2 hours west of Boston, probably about a half an hour north of Hartford in Western Massachusetts.
Okay, yeah, nice. I have family in Providence. I've been up to Providence in Boston, I mean,
They just
20,
got
30
they just got
times.
37 inches of snow, so it's been a rough road for them. But I know Providence very well.
Yeah, I was just on the phone with my uncle last week. Not last week, just yesterday actually, and he was like, "Yeah, I've been stuck in the house since Saturday,
Yeah,
40 inches of snow."
it's
But I
been
love
rough
it
out
up
there
there.
for them. Yeah,
Like I said, I went up there probably once or twice a year growing up, but
nice.
I do love New England. But yeah, tell me a little bit about how you started the ATM business. What's your origin of getting into ATMs? What were you doing before that, and what kind
Yeah,
of brought you into it?
yeah, it's kind of I kind of came into the ATM business kicking and screaming, believe it or not. Is I used to work for JP Morgan and the bank JP Morgan. And what I did is I worked on the food stamp program. So we were the contractor for the food stamp program for what was called the Northeast Coalition of States, which included the New England states and the state of New York. New York was very particular about having surcharge-free access to what's called TANF benefits, which is temporary assistance to needy family benefits. And prior, everybody usually knows it as welfare benefits. And that's the cash benefit that is distributed on the EBT card. So the state of New York really tasked us with, hey, we want clients to be able to access their money surcharge free. And when we started by putting out ATMs, low income areas in New York City. We deployed 70 ATMs. And if you can imagine, they were large NCR. We used to have riggers used to put them in. We used to have to put phone lines in. That was before cellular. And I mean, it was a task that we would put, and we had deployed about 70 ATMs, mostly Brooklyn, Bronx, and someone had approached us and said, there's a better way. There are all these private ATM guys that already have ATMs there. Give us some money to not surcharge EBT. And we thought it was a great program, and so we created this program. Is if you turned off the surcharge on your ATM, we would give you $100 a month. Plus, we would offset. We called it the offset program. Any EBT transactions that you did during that month, and we could see that because we were the authorizer on the EBT program too. So I started approaching private ATM guys. I got to know most of the New York ATM guys, and one of them was John Wildbaker from New York ATM. And if anybody knows John Wildbaker, he's quite the character. He would call me all the time, be like, "Yo, you got any more of these locations?" He would sometimes kind of drive me nuts. He's now one of my best friends, but I had a friend of a friend of a friend that had an ice cream that was cash only, and he was looking for an ATM, and he came to me. He says, "Hey, I'm looking for an ATM," and I'm like, I don't really do that. I said I work with people that have ATMs, but it's not something I really do. And I went to John, and I had given him the. Like, hey, do you want this location? And he's like, no, you should be in the ATM business. This is your first location. I think this was 2009. And I was like, no, I really don't want to be in the ATM business. I had just come off a divorce, really didn't have any money. And he says, well, I'm going to give you the ATM. He goes, and I'm going to show you what this can do. And he gave me the ATM. He put it on Armor Car. The first month that it was in, it did about 1,000 transactions at $2. And I wasn't giving a split to the location. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm making 2,000. Now we had just come off the 2008 banking crisis. crisis,
Hmm.
all the people, I had a bunch of people around me that got laid off. And, I think I barely got a raise that year, because of because all the banks were hurting. And I'm like, hey, this is a pretty good business. And I thought they were all like that. Right. And, so I started knocking on doors, and I had gotten, a laundromat, and I had gotten a few other locations. And that's kind of how I came into the ATM business. But yeah, the first one was 2009. It was a Hyosung 1500 SE, the gold ones. But yeah, and I did that for probably about 4 years. And like I said, 2009 and 2012, I started to grow fairly quickly, and I had about 75 ATMs at that point, and I just couldn't do both. I couldn't do the full-time job in the ATMs, and I kind of saw, we weren't bidding on EBT projects throughout the country anymore. We were losing them quite rapidly to Xerox, and I kind of saw the handwriting on the wall. And so I made the leap in 2012 to do it full time,
Yeah.
and I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. It's a very scary thing to think about, leaving your day job to pursue something for yourself. And it's not something that everyone can do.
In retrospect, I probably should have stayed a little bit longer, because one of the things that you do when you leave a full-time job, you think, okay, well, I'm going to replace my salary. And then you kind of forget about, health insurance. You forget about that. Okay. You forget about and if you're just trying to replace the salary, that's fine, but you also want to grow your business. So you need more above that to buy more machines. And the first couple of years were a struggle. There was no doubt it was a struggle.
Yeah, it's a grind, and like you said, just balancing home life, and people don't think about the insurance. Like when you're an independent, paying for your own insurance, it can become pretty crazy, especially if you have a family. And I know a lot of people personally that will stay with their job no matter how much they hate it because of the benefits and because of the 401k
Yeah.
and insurance that
Yeah.
they get. People that hate their jobs, but they're like, I'm sticking with it till
Yeah.
till retirement.
And then try to go to the bank and the first couple years in business and tell them you want to buy a house, and it's banks are just very sketched out about, especially new businesses, and you're trying to survive off of that. I fortunately, at the time had pulled the trigger on a house right before I left, because I knew it could be a challenge. But yeah, it's that's definitely an issue.
Yeah, and especially with the ATM business considered, I guess some banks consider it a high risk business. Some people even struggle to find a bank to back them to set up. I was lucky enough to have a really good relationship with the bank that I got in with. Didn't have any issues there at
Absolutely.
all. But what were some of the biggest challenges you faced kind of in those first 4 years when you kind of went
I
out
mean,
on?
it was definitely capital. It
Yeah.
was it was definitely finding the money to buy machines, but finding the money to fill the machines with. And I think I was fairly lucky, as I found some investors very early on, but it was a struggle. And then where I was in Springfield, Mass, it was hard to find locations. There was quite a few ATM guys in that area. And I had gotten a call one day from a bar in Worcester, Mass, which is halfway between Boston and Springfield. They wanted an ATM. I'm like, I don't know if I want to go to Worcester. I I did it, and it was probably the best thing that I did. Is I'm like, I'll just do it. It's 45 minutes away, and I found the I guess the honey hole in in Worcester. There was convenience stores. There was just no ATM guys in Worcester. There was ATM guys in Boston. There was ATM guys in Providence. There was ATM guys in Springfield. But Worcester had a like kind of a hole. And I was started walking into convenience stores that didn't have ATM, which was, even at that point, was kind of rare. And so I was able to grow fairly quickly, in Worcester, and it became, I made that trek almost every night. I kind of joked it was my second shift. Is I like, I'd get out of work at JP Morgan, I'd take a shower, and then I'd head east to Worcester, start filling and getting accounts. And it was just, is kind of almost a fish in the barrel situation. I don't know if it was luck, you call it, some people call it luck, or, I hope to think that it was like I was smart enough to identify the opportunity, and it was hard being that far away.
Yeah. And yeah, in business, I've always heard it's about putting yourself in the right position to get lucky. I mean, I do believe there is, with any very successful business person, there is some element of luck involved, but you also got to put yourself in that position to even get lucky. So it's a step by step thing, and just being in that right position.
Yeah. And where else I was lucky, that bar owner was very well known in Worcester. And he introduced me to a lot of people, and he inevitably became an investor early on in the business. He had quite a bit of money that pretty much I had unlimited access to capital. It wasn't cheap at the time, but to this day he's a friend, and he's now retired, but it was good timing all around.
That's amazing. It's an amazing story. I wish I was at the age in 2009 where I could have gotten to the
Yeah.
business. I'm a little younger and feel like I started a little late, but I'm still out here grinding for sure. Historically, what has been the most profitable locations for you? Like bars, retail, nightlife, festivals. What would you
Yeah.
say have been the most profitable ones for
I
you?
think I think that's kinda hard to answer, but I'm gonna say non-traditional locations, that there's sometimes the locations that you just don't think are gonna, and I'll give you a couple example. One of them is in Worcester, and it's a check cashing location that I have. We made it 99 cents. We have 2 ATMs in there, and the owner, I really identified it as he wanted the foot traffic. That's really what he wanted for his check cashing location, and he's in a low income neighborhood, and yeah, so, and we one of the ATMs is through the wall, and it's a great location. The other one is I'm in it was almost like a factory building, almost like a mall type situation, and 3 people passed on putting an ATM in that location. They kind of begged me to put one in, and I said, I'm not really interested in it." And I ended up doing it, and it ended up being one of my best locations. Well, in that building was a Massachusetts, we call them Registry of Motor Vehicles here. It's like the DMV, and you had to pay your speeding tickets there, and you could only pay them in cash. And there was certain other things you could only pay in cash. And it was just an absolutely amazing location that 3 people prior to me passed on. So those are, but other than that, it's traditionally low income areas tend to be very good. I like laundromats. A lot of people don't like them, but I like laundromats. I like nail salons, but low income and just those one-off non-traditional locations.
Yeah, that's I mean, I definitely me being in the vape vending and the ATMs, it's always the locations that you don't expect to do well that do well. It's definitely an interesting thing.
There's so many guys tripping over themselves to get to gas stations, and it becomes, the margins just become compressed. Is that you can get a nice nail salon where you're not giving a cut, and doing very well with, but the convenience stores, those kids get blasted. So it's just kind of going a little bit different direction than the other ATM guys.
Yeah, I think with the what's the word I'm looking for? The reason people want the gas stations, at least here in Tennessee, is our lottery is cash only. I don't know if it's
So is
like
ours.
that up there.
Yep.
Yes, so that's the big like my first ATM was in a gas station, and that was kind of what was able to jumpstart me off into business because that gas station location did so well. And I think it was because of how much lottery that gas station sells. People would just sit there and play lottery all day and keep going back to the
Oh yeah.
ATM over
Yeah.
and over.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Massachusetts has one of the strongest lotteries in the country, and it is cash only. I think Massachusetts is allowing it to go online a little bit. Sports gambling's chewed out of the lottery a little bit.
Mhm.
It's definitely, but we have a very strong lottery, and our convenience stores that have lottery are very good.
Yeah, that's what I've found. I don't have too many gas stations here, but the ones I do typically do decent. Don't have a laundromat, but I do have some nail salons that I give a lower slit to. that
Yep.
are great.
Yep.
What would you say is the biggest misconception people have about ATM income? Someone that isn't in the
Uh,
business but is thinking
definitely,
about getting
definitely
into
the
it.
yeah, definitely is, the YouTube gurus, pushing the, passive income. Just put this out and it's gonna flow in, and maybe I'm doing something wrong, but I haven't figured out how that happens.
Yeah.
As I tell people, there are passive elements to the
Hmm.
ATM business. So
Yeah.
when you're at home at night, you are still making income while you're sitting on the couch. You're doing sales, especially in the bars that are going overnight. But there's still just a lot of challenges, and from getting the cash out of the bank to constant repairs to ATM thefts. There's just always something to do. So it's not passive, but there are some passive elements to it.
Yeah, and I think it's also how large do you want to go to grow? I mean, the more you want to grow, the more you want to do, the less passive it becomes, to be
Yeah.
honest. I mean, sure, you can grab a couple really great machines, and that might be more of a passive thing if that's where you want to stay. But if you really want to scale and you want to grow, is definitely not a passive thing.
There becomes there's different levels. Around 75 machines, it becomes hard to run the business yourself. At 150 machines, you start to, well, I might need a shop, and then have the overhead that's eating at you. So I have a shop, two company vans. I always joke about my dumpster is like takes up two ATMs, a month in income is that I have to pay for the dumpster, and seven employees. And so when you start to get to those levels, sometimes I ask myself, boy, I'd probably make more money if I just got my 100 best locations and just did it all myself, and got rid of my shop and ran it out of my garage. So there's definitely that scaling piece to that when you get as you start to scale up is that you really have to question is, do I start to bring on more resources and more expenses and more overhead?
Yeah, yeah, and that's part of building any business, not even just the ATM. As you grow,
Yeah.
you have to make the right moves strategically, financially. It's all about making the right moves and looking at the numbers and figuring out what's best for you at that time. And yeah, it takes ambition and it takes a little some guts to take that leap to really try and grow. And hopefully, you make that money to cover that overhead
Yeah,
and cover those expensive. It's a very stressful thing that not everyone is built for. Say that for
absolutely.
sure. Yeah, yeah. What would you say is a mistake you made that taught you a valuable lesson early on?
I'm gonna say probably my mall story. As early on, one of my first locations was a mall. And anybody that's listening to this has done business with a mall in any fashion. Malls are greedy. They're greedy and they do everything in their terms. So you sign their contract, they don't sign your contract. Early on, this mall probably ended up being about 30% of my income. I was early on in the business, and I would do just about anything to keep that mall. They had come to me after I was in there for 6 months, and they said, we're gonna kick you out. And I'm like, I got a contract. You can't kick me out. And they said, well, we have a national vendor, a national ATM vendor that does our other malls, and he wants to come into this mall. And I'm like, oh wow. And I said, well, can you give me a chance to bid on it? And of course, and that's what they wanted from me. So here I am. I'm bidding against myself in this mall, like I wanted to keep this. And so I bid against myself. Well, probably about 2 years after that, I'm at an ATM trade show and somebody was introduced themselves to me, or we were meeting. I think we were sitting at the same table as lunch, and he says, there's a mall up near you. And I'm like, oh, you're the guy. And he says, yeah, they wanted me to take that over, but it was too small of a mall. He goes, I like their bigger ones. And I said, so you were never going to take that? It was kind of He said, "No." He goes, "I have all their other malls, but that one was just seemed too small for me." The mall tricked me pretty much, and I ended up bidding against myself, and I'll never forget that. And so I think as you work with some of the larger corporate entities, you just got to be careful, and you got to really realize that you just assume that they're ethical, but they're not. They're out for themselves. I'm happy to say that mall is now on the dead mall list,
Yeah.
but that was years ago. And, I could, and it, I ended up signing a 5-year contract with them, and it was just like I could not wait for the contract to be up. It was just, I mean, one thing after another.
Yeah.
I had put an ATM in a college that was about a mile away, and they found out that I had put in and they says, "Well, you need to take that ATM out, or you need to give us a portion of that ATM." And I'm like, "Why?" And they said, "Well, look on page 34 of your contract, and it says that you cannot deploy an ATM within 2 miles of mall property." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" And, I never ended up really reading the contract. I mean, it had to be 64 pages. And
Right.
and, yeah, so I think that's probably one of my biggest learning, and I was so intent on keeping that revenue that, it was ended up backfiring in me, and yeah, so
Yeah, and like you said, with the working with large corporations, I was talking to someone the other day in the vending space, and he works with some casinos, and he said these big casinos they always win. He's paying the biggest splits to the casinos out of all
yeah,
of his locations, and he said that's just what you get when you work with large corporations. So
yeah,
it's very I guess that's what you gotta watch out for, and maybe it might not be worth it to work with the large corporations for some smaller guys sometimes.
yeah.
Just definitely depends. What opportunities do you see today that didn't exist 10, 10, 15 years ago?
I think, 10, 15 years ago, we would never ever put an ATM in a barbershop. I mean, that wasn't a thing. So that's definitely an opportunity. I think opportunities for it, there's been a lot of consolidation in the ATM business. So I think there is opportunities for smaller operators to, to have that personal service. If you're going out as an ATM operator now and you're looking, you really have to sell yourself as, "Hey, I am a small local business like you." I think that's one of the opportunities. And then I think another opportunity is just really leveraging our relationships, and not only our real estate but our relationships. Is that, the small convenience stores that you're doing business, those guys are growing. They're still buying stores. They're still buying in my area. A lot of the merchants are buying liquor stores because they're easy to get financed through the banks because of the alcohol laws, especially in Massachusetts. But yeah, I think those are some of the opportunities. As you are in the vape vending, you're leveraging your relationships. And I think that's very, what else can you bring into that location and add value to that customer that you have? The small businesses that we're in are looking for revenue and looking for bottom line, just like the rest of a small business because being a small business isn't easy now. And so if you can bring an opportunity to them, whether it's, I was talking to somebody the other day about cell phone battery vending, vape
Uh,
vending. And I think that's why we're starting to see, if you go to the ATM trade shows, you're starting to see those opportunities, those people that are offering those services show up at the ATM show because we have the relationships.
yeah.
And you just really have to leverage those relationships and continue to stay close. And just another point is that as I grew, I don't go out in the field loading as much as I do. So I kind of lose that one-to-one connection. So that's really important as you grow too, is to, try to keep those one-to-one, try to reach out and touch people and just let them know that you exist, because sometimes you can go months and months without talking to them and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah, I like what you said. I actually used an exact line you said when I sometimes talk to people for any of my businesses, prospects for my AI company, vape, or ATM, I tell people, I'm a small business just like you. You're going to get that personal aspect. You're dealing with me or one of my couple employees, and it's different than working with huge companies. You're going to get that one-on-one service from me. So that's a good way to handle objections for sure. I've used that same thing to close deals. Another thing with the machine business, like you said, in these the vape vending and the mobile phone or going to these ATM conferences, because this business I found is all about networking, just knowing people. Some of my best locations I've gotten have been just from knowing the right person or knowing a bartender. I got a location the other day. I had an ATM in a bar, and I was walking down the street trying to pitch to other bars, and that a bartender was working in another bar where I already had an ATM. So I was like, "Oh, hey, I know you." And
Yeah,
she was
yeah.
like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Yeah, you mind talking to your owner for me?" And yeah, she talked to the owner for me, and I installed the next week. So yeah, it's really just about who you know and being good at networking and being
Absolutely.
open to meeting
Absolutely.
new people. So it's just interesting the way that works. But the best, I guess, to close this out, if someone wanted to build a large ATM business today, what would you say would be the step-by-step approach of someone new kind of starting that wanted to make it big?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be aggressive. Getting accounts is not easy as it used to be. I have a gentleman, he's probably been processing ATMs with me for probably about 4 years now. Um he's just aggressive. It's just within a 4-year period of time, I think he told me the other day he's up to like 242 ATMs. He does not drive past a location without dropping his business card. He is constantly, while he's loading his ATMs, he's constantly going out and dropping business cards, dropping just constantly doing that connection. And you have to I can't tell you how many people like that come to me, "I can't get a location for the life of me, Todd." And it's just like, how many stops have you stopped at? And he goes, "Well, I probably stopped at 5 or 6, you know." I mean, you gotta stop at hundreds of locations, and you really have to be out there. One of the unique things that he found, and I've found over the years too, sometimes you leave your business card at a location and you won't hear from them for 2 years. And I had a call, it was probably about a year ago now, and they says, "Oh, your business card was in my Rolodex." And I'm thinking, "What?" Like, I haven't dropped off business, I don't really hit the streets as much as I used to anymore. I'm like, "Geez, I never had that location, that physical location." Eventually it came to me as like, wow, I dropped a business card off probably in 2009, and this was literally like 10 years later. There was they were flipping through their Rolodex, and who has a Rolodex anymore? And, my business card was there. I ended up getting the location. So just don't think that it's in vain just dropping. There's a ATM franchise company called, I think it's AFCN, and everybody's kind of have heard about them. It's kind of like a joke of the ATM business, but they have a thing called the drop. So you drop a business card with a flyer, and then you go back and you call. As the franchisee, they expect you to do like 100 drops a month. And that's really how you get locations, and then they help you close the locations after you do the drops. But
Yeah.
I've always done that kind of things as far as getting locations. And then the availability of capital is just sometimes you got to get kind of creative. The other thing I would suggest to people is just don't get yourself in debt.
Yeah.
Debt can chew up your profitability very quickly. Try like hell to be debt free. I know there was times where I got a little deeper in debt, and those are uncomfortable moments, and just try to avoid that.
Yeah, yeah, that is great advice. It definitely sales, and especially with this being relentless, being okay to be told no, because you're gonna get
Yeah,
100 no's before you get a yes. You gotta have thick skin, be okay with getting those no's, and yeah, just dropping those business cards off. You might get a location a year later or 2 years later, like you
yep,
said. It
absolutely.
happens all the time where you talk to someone and you just mentioned, I try and tell everyone about what I do, because even if they don't use my services right now, I've had someone hit me up 6 months later, a year later, and being like, "Hey, you still do ATMs, you still do this," and it's a very real thing. And it just goes back to what I said before about networking and being open to always talking to people and speaking to people.
One of the biggest things about getting ATM accounts is timing, right? Is that you just don't know when that business owner is going to open a new store, or they get upset with their other ATM company, or it's so a lot of it is just timing. And I think that's when you is being at the right place at the right time. And I know I've had convenience stores that I've gone after over the years, and I've like, I really want to be in that convenience store. It's in my area. It looks like a good convenience store. And one of my competitors ends up in there, and you say, why did that happen? They just had better timing than me. I tried and tried and tried, but they happened to either call or walk in the door at the right time of them being ticked off or upset, or and it kind of ticks me off, like, why not me? But a lot of it is just the right timing.
Yeah, right time, right place. Definitely agree with you there. But yeah, thanks for coming on. It was
Yeah,
great.
no,
It
I
was
had
great
fun.
speaking to you.
This is great.
Great speaking to you, networking, and I like meeting and talking to new people. I'm newer to podcasting, but I enjoy it. I enjoy talking and networking to people. And yeah, y'all give Todd a follow on LinkedIn or on Facebook. I'll drop some of his links in the description so y'all can give him a follow.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Appreciate it.